Can you enable
Oh,
me?
let me go ahead and give you there you go. You
Thank
can
you.
share away now.
Wendy or Stacy, can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, but it's showing the next slide and possible notes.
Okay. Let me try something different. Is that any better?
No, you might have to
Mm.
go. Oh, go ahead,
Same.
Wendy.
Oh, no, I was gonna say it's still the same.
Okay. Stand by.
If you end slideshow, oh, there you go.
Great.
So I'm still not seeing Tom.
He just said that he is not in yet.
So my email and phone and Tom's email and phone should be on the Odo website for this program. So I think if anybody tries to connect and they can't get in, we most likely will hear from them. So I'll be trying to watch my email closely.
Great. Thank you. Well, it's 9:02, Stacy. Should we officially get started?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll check on Tom and see if he's able to get on. I'm not sure if he's having trouble.
Okay, great. Are our audience members here?
It looks like we have 13 attendees so far.
Great, thank you. I will get started then. Welcome everybody to our HB 3141 self-direct rulemaking stakeholder meeting. My name is Andy Cameron. I'm the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Manager here at Odo, and I'll be joined by a few colleagues that as we get going can introduce themselves. Before we do that, let me do a brief overview of our agenda. As I mentioned before, we'll introduce ourselves and a little bit about our role in this program. And then we'll cover some background information on the public purpose charge and HB 3141. We'll then examine the changes and impacts on self-direction, and then dive a little bit into the rulemaking process as it unfolds over this current fall. And we'll be sure to save some time at the end for discussion and opportunities for us to gather input and answer questions, as well as generate a follow-up list. Before we get into the overview, I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves. We'll start with Wendy Simons, our rulemaking coordinator.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Wendy Simons. I am, as Andy said, the rulemaking coordinator who is working on this, which means I will be helping to run the rulemaking process, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the agenda, as well as helping to write the rules, some of the changes to the rules for this program. And I've worked on a previous rulemaking for this program, so I have some familiarity with the program as well.
Great, thank you, Wendy. We're also joined by Christy Splitt. Christy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi there. I'm the Oregon Department of Energy Government Relations Coordinator, and I also am here just to listen in and hear if there's concerns and make sure that we follow up, and just know that we're here to talk offline too if there's anything that comes up today and you want to chat about it, not here.
Thank you, Christy. We'll also be joined by Tom Elliott. He's our program lead for the Self-Direct program. Tom's having a little bit of technical difficulty, so when he arrives, I'll be sure to pause and let Tom introduce himself. Also, before we begin, I do want to say that this meeting is being recorded and will be available for viewing at a later time on ODO's website. Perhaps when we get to the rulemaking aspects, Wendy can offer a little more clarity on how to access this presentation. So to start us off, we'll talk a little bit about the background of House Bill 3141. This slide depicts some of the core aspects of the bill. First of all, it extends the public purpose charge for another 10 years with a sunset date of January 1st, 2036. It also reduces the public purpose charge from 3% of revenues to 1.5% collected from the ratepayers of both PGE and Pacific Power. The bill moves cost-effective energy efficiency work from the public purpose charge and those funds paid within the rates of PGE and Pacific Power customers. The bill also adds language in the renewable section to allow the funds to be used for what's being called distribution system connected technology. And you'll often hear that referred to as DSCT. The definition of DSCT will come from the Oregon PUC. They'll provisionally define it for 2022 with some permanent definitions to follow. These technologies support reliability, resilience, and integration of renewable energy within the distribution system. Here we have a summary table of the current state of things under SB 1149 and some of the changes brought about by House Bill 3141. First of all, the collected amounts go from 3% of customer revenue to 1.5%. And as we go through this table and subsequent discussions, it's important to keep in mind that many of these programs largely remain whole, even though the percentages change and can often look a little confusing. In the current system, school districts receive the first 10% of the collected revenues. Changes brought about by the bill will have them receive 0.3% of revenues of the 1.5% collected customer amounts. And really, they do remain whole. 20% of the 1.5% does mathematically equal out to 10% of the original 3. Low income weatherization under the current bill, 11.7% goes to those programs. Under 3141, that's 0.55%. Low income housing receives some percentage changes as well, going from 4.5% to 0.14. It looks like Tom is still having some difficulties, so I'll do my best to go through the self-direct changes, which is really why we're here to have this discussion. Currently under SB 1149, the self-direct program conservation portion receives 56.7%. One of the biggest changes from this bill is cost-effective energy efficiency largely goes away from the public purpose charge and is collected in rates from all retail electricity customers. On the renewable side of things, we're going from 17.1% to 75% of the 0.51% renewable energy and distribution system technology amounts. Before we get into a deeper discussion, we thought it would be useful to go over some of the definitions and supporting documents. This presentation will be posted on ODO's website, and again, Wendy can walk through how to access that during the rulemaking portion. But there are some important links here offering additional information. So first of all, you'll often hear self-direct referred to as LECPP, and that's an acronym for Large Electric Consumer Public Purpose Program. And self-direct is really the terminology for purchases of renewable energy and energy conservation for own sites, rather than remitting the portion of public purpose charge that is designated for those purposes. We have a link to the 3141 enrolled bill on the OLS website, and a nod that the sections 1 and 2 contain changes to the PPC. Other links that offer helpful background information are ODO's own LECPP page, the administrative rules, and the rulemaking process specifically for this bill. An excellent overview of the public purpose charge and the dollar allocations can be found in our 1719 legislative report. Here we have a process overview of the current way that the self-direct program works. Sites with an average annual 1 average megawatt usage can register with ODO. The agency will then review and approve the registration. Projects can be submitted to ODO, which will again go through a review and approval process, and the site implements the project and applies for credit with ODO. The follow-up work at the utility end, those folks enter monthly data and the public purpose charge obligation into the database. The green tag process, or REX, combines some of those middle steps. A little bit more on the process side and a more text-heavy slide that I'll leave up for additional clarification offers a little bit more detail on those steps. So here's a bit of a recap of some of the key takeaways from House Bill 3141. Offering a bit of urgency to our process as an operative date of January 1st, 2022. On the renewable side of things, we have, again, the distribution system connected technologies with a definition pending from PUC. And PUC and ODO are working with the Energy Trust of Oregon to maintain a consistent definition for the sites and all stakeholders involved. And then we have self-direct limited to 75% with 25% carve out for low and moderate income. On the conservation side of things, the public purpose charge conservation aspect is essentially gone, and that's again recovered through rates. Apologies. So the sites will have the same registration process, and it is ODO's intent to offer the greatest continuity and consistency between the old and the new. On the renewable side of things, the distribution system connected technologies offer a new eligible category for renewable portion of the PPC. The process to submit and review is again the same as the current way of doing things. Sites may self-direct only 75%, with 25% going to low and moderate income programs. There's no change to the green tag process, though the burn rate may be slower due to the low and moderate income aspects. On the conservation side of things, the public purpose charge is essentially moot, but site credit balances roll to energy efficiency on January 1st. Cost-effective energy efficiency is recovered through rates, and the same submit and review process with a continual 1 to 10 year simple payback method in the approval process, that remains the same. And with that, I'll turn it over to Wendy Simons to walk us through the rulemaking process that's unfolding over this current fall.
Hi again. So as the rulemaking coordinator, I will be working to kind of take care of the various steps in this process. Just looking at the attendee list, it looks like many of you are very familiar with state agency rules and the rulemaking process. Some of you may not be, but basically state agency rules are the way that state agencies fill in the details from statute and bills that are passed by the legislature, and often set up kind of guidelines and processes for agencies to follow and participants in programs to follow. So in this case, as Andy mentioned, we are doing our best to preserve continuity for participants in the program. So we do have a number of changes that will need to be made to the rules, but in many cases it will be kind of adding some of the eligible uses for DSCID or distribution system connected technologies, and just making sure that we're very clear about kind of the definitions and the names of the different portions of the public purpose charge, and also for the cost-effective energy efficiency. So as we have our three main bullets here, the purpose of this rulemaking is to revise our processes to implement any changes that were made by House Bill 3141 to the program. Most of those will be relatively minor, but we are trying to do our best to keep things to provide continuity for current participants. And the process, the steps in the process will largely be the same, with pre-certifying and then making sure that the expenditures that are made are eligible expenditures, and then providing credit for the self-directing sites. There will be some housekeeping that we'll need to do to the rules as well. We do have some language that's obsolete, and we'll need to relook at the program administration fee for this program. We will have, I think, maybe some database work that Tom or Andy could talk about if people have questions. And you'll note there's a link at the bottom of this website on our agency rulemaking webpage, where we have information about all the rulemakings that are currently or recently underway at ODO. We can post the recording of this slideshow or of this meeting, as well as the slideshow. So we will get that up there as soon as we're able to. But on that rulemaking webpage, you can also see the draft rules. Once we have draft rules, you'll be able to see when the public hearing will be and all of those other scheduled happenings. So Andy, if you could flip forward to the next slide, and I'll talk a little bit about that schedule.
Great, thank you, Wendy.
Great. So we are, as Andy mentioned, at a fairly tight time frame. We need to get rules into place by January 1 for January 1, 2022, which is the operative date in the bill. So we are trying to build in as much opportunity for stakeholder input as we can. And also, as Andy mentioned, there's also some work that's going on at the PUC that is scheduled for this fall. So I've put a couple of items into this timeline that are highlighted in kind of a greenish bluish color that some of you may be very interested in. On October 21st, there's a discussion in the PUC of distribution system connected technologies and the definition. And We do have a couple of people from PUC who are in this meeting if any of the attendees have more specific questions. But as far as I know, they will have a staff memo that will be coming out sometime later this fall, and there will be opportunities to look at the memo and to give input. And the PUC, and that's the Public Utilities Commission, will have information on their website. So now skipping over to Odo's process, November 1st, we will have the draft rules and hearing notice published. That's our plan. And that is published by the Oregon Secretary of State. And it's part of the official rulemaking process. November 1st to approximately December 1st is when we plan to have a public comment period. So that is an opportunity for people to read the draft rules, to give us comments, give us any advice on how to make the rules easier to use, or if there's anything you see that we may have missed, or other changes that you would recommend. This is an opportunity to let us know. And around December 1st, we plan to have a public hearing. And at the public hearing, participants can give us oral testimony and as well as written testimony up through that date. November 30th is the planned date for the PUC, for the commission itself, to adopt a provisional definition of distribution system connected technologies. And the plan is for that definition to be in place for 2022. And at some point later, I think maybe later in 2022, there will be a process to put in place a more permanent definition. Odo will take all of the input that we get in our public hearing and through our public comment period, and take any of that into account with our rules. And then we plan to actually file the rules. December 22nd is our target date, just before the holidays. And again, it will be effective January 1st. So for those of you who have worked with a rulemaking process before, hopefully this sort of timeline is very familiar to you, that all agencies need to follow certain state procedures for rulemaking. But if you're not as familiar with rulemakings, please reach out to us, and we're open to hearing input, and will help with any guidance you might need to understand the process. So please reach out to us. Thanks.
Thank you, Wendy. We will have some contact information for Wendy, as well as Tom Elliott, our self-direct program lead, at the end of the slideshow, which again can be accessed on the Odo website at the end of this presentation.
Andy, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you for joining us, Tom. Will you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yes, good morning. Tom Elliott. I'm the self-direct or LECPP program manager. Apologies, had a little technical glitch this morning, so I'm joining by phone. And actually that moves kind of in the next to last phase here. Actually, perhaps maybe the most important part, which is to gather some input from you, answer any questions you might have, and then if there's follow-up items, then we wanted to be sure and capture those. But as Wendy just mentioned, there's the rulemaking process that we're kind of at the front end of now, and this is really your, one of your chances, but one of the good ones to be up in the front end. And we showed you or showed and told you kind of conceptually what's going to happen, and we'll need to translate that into the actual rule revisions. But what we wanted to do now is make sure that you understood kind of how the program works and what the changes are. So we'll entertain any questions and input that you might have now.
Thank you, Tom. And I'm not the most familiar with WebEx, but it might be beneficial for folks to chime in the chat if we don't notice a raised hand or other ways of trying to signal us.
And Andy, you're going to have to give me the chat because I can't read it. I'm audio only.
Okay, great. I may
Questions
rely
for me.
on Stacy to do that. She's running our presentation.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any questions for Tom, our subject matter expert, or Wendy on the rulemaking side of things? And again, we have some folks from the PUC here as well if questions need to be directed towards them.
This is Christy. I don't think I see any hands up. I see a bunch of people with exclamation points next to their name. I don't know what that means, but I don't see any hands up, I don't think. So definitely if people are raising their hands and not seeing it, do post in the Q&A and let us know that there's some sort of problem because I don't see any hands up.
To make things easier, I might stop sharing the slides and go back to the normal WebEx version. I splashed the contact info for both Tom and Wendy on the screen now. Again, this can be accessed on the Odo webpage if you don't capture those emails right now.
Hi, Andy. This is Stacy.
Hey, Stacy.
Hey, I got a chat. It was just sent directly to me. It's from Robert Hart. He's asking, what does it mean that conversation is covered through rates? Or I'm sorry, conservation.
Conservation.
Is covered through rates.
That's a great question, and thank you for asking that. I'll let Tom take a swing at that one.
Yeah, that is an excellent question. So it's the same intent is to collect monies from all of the electric consumers and to use them for conservation and energy efficiency. It's more really about the mechanism now. And so whereas before it was a separate component within the public purpose charge, I believe it was what, 56.7% of the 3% public purpose charge, and then there's other monies. It's all been sort of consolidated in rates. And so the utilities will include some portion on everybody's rate schedule to capture to fund it. So some small incremental amount will be added to the rates. And then when you apply those to everybody's usage and then, collect all of it across all of the customer bases, then will collect all of the monies needed for the energy trust to administer the energy efficiency program. So I'm not sure if that kind of answers the question. So effectively, it's the same end goal with a little bit different mechanism. And I would also invite the PUC colleagues to make any corrections if I didn't get that exactly right, but that's, I think, generally probably correct.
Great, thank you, Tom.
Andy, again, I see a question now from Tyler, and I'm going to unmute him so he can ask that.
Great, thank you, Stacy. Tyler, what's your question?
It's not really a question, actually. It was just a note following up on that question that the public purpose charge had a 3% cap for customers over 1 average megawatt. Energy efficiency being moved to recovery through rates. That cap remains. That's actually a 3.2% cap now, but I just thought it would be worth clarifying that cap still exists through 2025, even though part of the cost gets recovered through rates.
Great, thank you, Tyler. That is an important clarification. Appreciate you chiming in. Any other questions for Tom, Wendy, or our friends at the PUC? Stacy, do we have any remaining hands up or chat messages?
I don't see anything. And for those who may not be familiar with WebEx, you can access the chat. If it's not open on your screen in the lower right-hand side, there's a little chat bubble. You can open that and it'll open a window where you can type out a question, or there's a little raise hand feature down there too.
Thank you, Stacy. Well, if no further questions or comments remain, I'll offer a reminder that you can always get a hold of Tom, Wendy, or myself on the ODO webpage. This presentation, as I mentioned before, does have some helpful links for additional background information. One of the most beneficial being our recent legislative report. Okay, well, thank you all for joining us. Please keep the rulemaking schedule in mind and take advantage of the public comment period. And thank you for taking time this morning to hear about HB 3141 and ODO's plans for rulemaking. And with that, Stacy, I'll turn it over to you for closeout.
All right, Andy, I will give it just 30 more seconds and I'll close it out.
Great. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.